Hi everyone, just a quick spoiler warning for The Light Amidst the Waves based on the Yokai Hunter Society. If you have not played this adventure or you intend to play this adventure in the future, please don't watch this video because I'll be going in depth into how I designed the adventure and of course there will be spoilers in it. But otherwise, please stick around and enjoy the rest of the content. Hi everyone, my name is Nicholas. I'm the head GM at the Alternative RPG Club, and today's video is going to go a little bit behind my design process, and I just wanted to share a little bit about how I write an adventure or how I approach my design for a one shot, because I've been doing the original one shots for quite a few months now, and I think I like to think that I picked up a thing or two, and it's valuable information for some GMs to have, and maybe it might give you some better tips on how to run an adventure like this as well, or how to design an adventure like this. Yeah, I hope that this is going to be useful. If not, it's going to be like a kind of diary for me to record some of my thoughts and approach so I can come back and view it and see what I can tweak and what the ideas I can put in at a later date. But anyway, if you like this piece of content, please feel free to like and subscribe, comment, blah blah blah. I'll be super appreciative of that. Okay, so the adventure that we're going to talk about today is Amidst the Waves, I believe it's called. The Light Amidst the Waves, and it is for the system Yokai Hunter Society. Okay, one of the things I wanted to do with this adventure is to make it nautical themed, or it has to be related, not nautical themed I guess, but it has to be related to the sea in some way, because for the particular month that I ran this in, September, almost all my adventures were related to the sea, and I was trying to do like a theme thing that kind of actually helped me narrow down a lot of my ideas for what a Yokai Hunter Society adventure is going to be. So, for those of you who don't know what Yokai Hunter Society is, you are basically monster hunters slash demon hunters in Meiji, Japan. It's pre-industrial. Basically, the U.S. just forced Japan to like open their waters for trade, and people are upset about it. Some of them are not upset. There is a rising middle class, and of course, because of this industrialization and everything, feudalism has taken a back seat, and a lot of the samurai and the warlords of the past have lost their purpose and their prestige, so to speak. So a lot of them have been actually demoted to farmers, or they are not even in the cities anymore, like relocated to Hokkaido, other parts of Japan that may be less populous. So there's some interesting history there. And of course, if Japanese mythology and all that, there's a lot of meat there. So I know a couple of things about this adventure now. I know that it needs to involve some kind of monster because this entire system is about monster hunting. I know it has to be sea related, or at least by the sea. And I've already done some research. I've already written this adventure a little bit, and I'll take you through that process. But essentially, it has narrowed down a lot of things for me. One of the things I searched for initially was Japanese seaside festivals, and there was one that really struck out to me because it was just so perfect and ripe for this particular angle that I'm going for, which is the Fire Festival of the Sea. This one takes place in Kumamoto, which is a lovely place. I've been there, really nice. But essentially, this festival is to celebrate Emperor Keiko, who went on a pilgrimage to Kyushu about 1,000 years ago. 1,000 years from this date, I don't know, maybe back when this adventure takes place, it would have been like hundreds. I don't know how many 100 years ago would this have been, but it would have been like at least a couple of 100 years ago. But anyway, the story says Emperor Keiko was coming by ship, and it was night, and it was dark, and that particular harbor was full of threats, cliffs, and stones, and blah blah blah. But on that particular day, as he was traversing the sea, there were flames that kind of lit him a path to the coast, and that is why this festival is celebrated. The cool thing about this is actually that this Shiranyu thing. So the town was called, sorry, the flame. After the emperor witnessed it, he called it Shiranui, and also named the village after this flame that guided him to this village. The funny thing about this thing is it's actually happening still right now. The flames itself, it's actually some kind of optical illusion. I did some research into it that I could not make sense of. So luckily for me, this is not an adventure that I want to go deep into science or anything like that. So I'm just gonna keep with the whole mystical element of it. And yeah, this festival is still happening right now. I did more research into it. I was trying to find some videos of this optical illusion. Unfortunately, I couldn't find anything, but I managed to find this really cool video of the festival actually taking place. If you can see, there was some literature about what the ritual is and how it happens as well in some of the Wikipedia articles and all that. But this is like immediately something that when I look at this, I'm like, okay, I want my players to do something like that, like fire arrow into like a torch and then have the sea, etc. Definitely putting this in the adventure, that's one thing. Then yeah, and it's really lovely with the backdrop and everything like that. But there's one part, yeah, this part. So once the torch is lit, apparently the locals recreate the scene of the emperor coming onto land, and that's where we have some ships, little boats that recreate that scene, and that's essentially a big part of the festival. I know a few things now. I know I want this whole ritual to be recreated. So I need a reason for all these things to happen. Why are the PCs creating this ritual? And the more kind of research I did, the next thing I needed is I know that I have the ritual now. I have the vibe of the adventure. What I'm missing now is a monster. It's a creature. One thing that pointed me in the right direction was that this Shiranui, I think it mentions somewhere here also that the legend is that this flame it's like a lamppost of the dragon god. So he uses it to light the surface of the water to guide ships to safety, etc. And the more I dug into this legend, the more stuff I found. So I started to Google for sea monsters as well. And there were a few that kind of stuck out to me. First of all, the Ryujin, which is like the water god that's referenced in the legend. The other one that I think I could incorporate into this adventure was the Funa Yurei. These guys are basically zombie sailors and pirates who died at sea, and the sea god claims them and turns them into his thralls and minions, etc. Might not be 100% accurate to that Japanese folklore in that way. I believe these are just evil spirits who died in the sea, but for my purposes, I wanted them to be the thralls of the dragon god, because I want the story needs some kind of antagonist, like a monster antagonist, and I can't have the players fight the sea god, they will die. So they need to fight something else that's related to the sea god, and I think this is something that the players may be able to handle. Again, Yokai Hunter Society is not a very combat heavy game, and it's pretty deadly as well. Yeah, then my players are not going to fight sea gods. They will die. They will die for sure. Okay, cool. So now I have like all the pieces, right? I have the monster, I have the festival, I have the monster, I have the festival, I have the vibe of the adventure. I need something else to tie this all together, right? And I think I found my answer when I researched the Ryujin a little bit more. The Ryujin uses something called tide stones. I'm not sure where the link is now. Yeah, the tide jewels. The tide jewels are like a mystical artifact. Basically, there are two. One is a tide ebbing jewel, and one is the tide flowing jewel. The dragon god apparently uses this to control the ebb and flow of the sea. So I thought, okay, great. I have something that can tie this all together. How? The idea, at least for my adventure, is that some oyster farmers in the area have discovered this gem at the bottom of the sea. It's it's the tide ebbing jewel. They don't know what it is, but of course, being like a farmer, if you find something nice at the bottom of the sea, you want to keep it and probably sell it off and blah blah blah, right? Yeah, they think they struck gold and they sell it to a local merchant who has grown so obsessed with the beauty of this jewel. I needed a reason why the trader just doesn't immediately ship this item off to the city to fetch a higher price. So I wrote it so that he's so obsessed with the beauty of this jewel that he wants to keep it for himself instead of shipping it off. Because if he ships it off, then the players have nothing, can't find the tide ebbing jewel in town. So yeah, so that's like the general vibe. The farmers steal essentially the jewel from the sea. They sell it off, and now the sea god is like super angry, and he's sending like his minions to ransack the place and try and find this jewel. Yeah, and at the same time, the festival is just about to happen. So there are a lot of people on the streets. People are in a little bit of a festive mood, but some strange things are happening and it's causing them distress. And that's why the Yokai Hunter Society has been called. So the other thing I thought about when I designed this adventure is that why is there a festival happening when there are like undead roaming the streets? The setting itself helps me with this in some way because this is pre-industrial revolution. All this new tech like steam trains and electricity and stuff like that has been quite wondrous for a lot of the local Japanese, especially in rural areas, to witness. And of course, the more people believe in science and look for logic, the less they fall back to tradition and they tend to believe in these old, essentially fairy tales less and less. Which is, that helps me a little bit, right? If somebody tells you, "Hey, I saw a guy get beaten on the street by a zombie dude," you're not gonna believe that. And I think, yeah, the setting does help with a little bit. So there have been like, I'm not gonna say there's gonna be a horde of undead that flood in from the sea. It could just be hit squads, like 3, 4 at a time, going to different homes to try and catch this thing, to find this jewel. And that has been sparking some rumors, but not so much that the not so much that immediately someone wants to come in and be like, hey, we gotta close this shit down. The other reason I put in there also is because, as part of the setting, there has, at this period of Japan, there's been a lot of unrest due to the government is being forced to open trade with the US, and that's tough, right? And a lot of the locals don't like it. The middle class do, because it means more trade and more jobs, but a lot of the traditional locals don't like it. And I wrote it so that, okay, the government's, you know what, let's give this festival to them so it boosts morale and there is a lesser chance of some kind of uprising happening. So the festival is still happening. People are being told to be a little bit more careful. The other thing I wanted to incorporate to the adventure was a sense of urgency. So I didn't want the players to think, oh, okay, I got all this time to do it. I wanted it to really be like, okay, by the night of the festival, you have to solve the case. And why do they have to solve it by the night festival? The answer is in the jewel. Because they stole the tide ebbing jewel, the tide is not bringing the sea back. So it's slowly starting to flood the village. So it's like a ticking time bomb. They don't realize it yet, but in the morning, the tide is getting higher and higher. And as the day progresses, what I plan to do is to tell the PCs, hey, there's water up to your ankles now. And by 6 p.m., it's so unsafe in the village that everyone has gone back to their homes to hide, etc. And I estimate by about this time, the PCs would have enough idea or will know what to do. Anyway, the ritual needs to be done at night to appease the dragon god. Yeah, that's the general kind of setup that I have. How do I lead the players into this adventure? I want them to have a little bit of, as players ourselves, we will have a little bit of a fish out of water moment. We've never experienced feudal Japan in this way. I wanted the players to have a little bit, the characters to have a little bit of that moment as well. So none of them have been to this village. They are carted in by train by the Yokai Society somewhere else from Tokyo or something like that. They tell them that something weird's going on. You're gonna come and figure stuff out. So they come and then they meet a local administrator who tells them about the latest murder. Who, surprise, is one of the oyster farmers who has used the earnings from selling this jewel to buy a new home. But when they arrive, there's only one body at the scene. There's another farmer. Where is that farmer? And that's like the first breadcrumb that I'm leaving there. I think one of the things that a lot of GMs struggle with is some of them have an idea that, yeah, I want my players to do anything possible, whatever they want to do, I'm going to let them do it. And they might feel like, okay, if I'm like, okay, so these are the ways I've listed, the steps that players will need to follow to solve the mystery. Some GMs might feel like this is railroading, etc., etc. But the truth is, if you play any kind of investigative game, it is a break. It is what do you call that? A train track, a railroad, because you are following a trail of clues and evidence and trying to relate things to each other. So there's no going around it. I guess there is. So there is a system actually. I forgot about what it's called, what that system is called now. But you essentially play grandmothers who are discovering eldritch horrors in their homes. It's like a really indie thing, and essentially the players make up their own clues. But that's that game. But for the majority of investigative games, you are following a trail. So yeah, it's not railroading. My philosophy is always it's not railroading your players if the railroad is a path that your players want to go on or feel excited to go on. Because yeah, it's only railroading. Railroading is only a negative experience when your players feel like, oh, that's not what I want to do. I could have done something else, etc., etc. So yeah, that's it. Okay, just to add on a little bit about that, there is a limit, right? If the adventure is called Adventure in Baldur's Gate, you don't tell me as a PC, I want to buy the first ferry out of Baldur's Gate to, I don't know, Winter Grasp in Skyrim or something like that. Doesn't work that way, right? You sign up for this adventure, you play this adventure, you don't tell me you want to go, I don't know, my D&D lore is not very good, but yeah, I don't know, somewhere else, basically. Okay, anyway, back to this adventure. The way I usually plan it out is I have like a short introduction that kind of tells myself or the GM. It helps me organize my thoughts and plan, okay, where's the head of the story, where's the tail of the story, and what are the events or occurrences that lead from one to the other. So I have that story, I have the general setup. Then I have everything ready basically. Now I just want to fill in the middle parts. How do the players discover this story and the clues and fragments of the story? The most important thing for players is that they will probably want to have an objective. They need to figure out how to, once they figure out the bigger picture, they need to learn how to stop the dragon god from flooding the entire place and sending all his entire army into the village. Okay, so what are the steps that need to happen for the players to resolve this? First of all, they need to learn about the history of the Fire Festival. So again, none of them have been to Kumamoto or this festival before, so they don't really have a good idea of what's going on. The second thing is, of course, they need to find the type ebbing jewel, which is somewhere in the city. Third, they need to perform the Fire Festival ritual. And fourth, I added this on my own because I wanted there to be a little bit more of a dramatic end to the adventure. They need to offer a worthy sacrifice to appease the dragon god. And this one kind of gives the players a little bit of choice into what sacrifice exactly you want to give, because there are certain implications depending on what you give, etc. Okay, after that, I break down some details like the Fire Festival, what the Fire Festival is about, so I wrote it down here already, and what is needed, what is needed for the ritual to be done. The ritual itself is quite interesting. I mostly followed what the festival ritual is also doing. They celebrate by lighting the torches near the shrine, which is really beautiful. Let me find it for you. Yeah, look at that. That's like perfect adventure setting, right? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Anyway, they need to light the torches near the shrine at high tide at night because again we're trying to recreate that moment when the emperor arrived, so it has to be night. And then offering should be placed on the shrine. That would depend on what the players want to put on the shrine in particular. There will be some kind of clues as to what might be appropriate later on in the adventure, but yeah, I'm gonna give the players some choice here. Or next, a worthy soul must be on board the boat to call out to the dragon god. In the actual ritual, what they do after the torch is lit is the mayor of the town and like his wife is gonna come in a boat and recreate the emperor landing. But for this one, I retooled it a little bit because I wanted one of the PCs to be on that boat out into the water through the Torii gates because that would be so cinematic, right? They go through the Torii gates and then they call out to the sea and this giant dragon figure shows up. I thought that was cool, so I wanted that scene to be in that adventure. Now that I have all these pieces, I need to find some ways to let the players know about it in a really organic way, or at least I try to make it as organic as possible. One of the things that really helped me with playing these kind of adventures was the Alexandrian's video on the three clue approach. So the idea is that for every fact or everything that you want your PCs to know, make sure you have three ways for them to find out. The idea is that your PCs are probably not going to go the route you plan for or think they might go for. So you always have a fallback to introduce this clue into the thing. Or let's say if they fail a check and they don't discover the clue, they can find it somewhere else. And your next question might be, okay, but what if my PCs find the clue already in the first place, and then they go to the second place, and then they pass and find the clue again and it's the same as the first clue. The key to that is, for example, let's say how to players learn more about the Fire Festival. Uh, there are a few parts to the Fire Festival, right? First of all, it's the Emperor arriving. Then after that, what the flame, the whole idea of the flame thing is about, and when it has to happen, or why it's happening at night, blah blah blah. So I can break this down to three different clues. Most of the time, when I tell the players maybe one or two of the clues, they can fill in the third one by themselves. You do give them like a clue that points them in the right direction for every kind of like check or any one of these events they encounter, but they don't get the full picture, but they can also very reasonably guess the full picture if you get where I'm coming from. Because usually if you give your players like one clue, sometimes, I don't know if you've experienced this, but as GMs, but sometimes before I learn about this technique, I would give them a clue and they would be like, oh, but what if it's like this whole other thing instead? And then they go on like a whole different tangent. So it's actually good for you to have two clues that relate to the same thing because after that, when they discover the second clue, they'll be like, it kind of the actual story instead of this crazy tangent that we went on before. So that kind of helps also to reinforce and tell the players that, hey, you are on the right track. This is what's happening, and you found another piece pointing towards the truth. Yeah, because players will always have this mentality that, oh, fuck, my GM is like screwing with me and it's not the whole truth, or someone's lying, something like that. And this kind of helps to really bring people back a little bit. Okay, how do players learn about the Fire Festival? I've come up with a few ways. So there may be merchants at the festival ground that know tale well enough. I like this one. There's a kabuki show in town, so they can go in for a little bit of a cultural experience, blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to do a kabuki show myself, but I might do a little bit of description and tell them about the story. They all have to pay like a fee to get in. And of course, there's probably a temple in town that they can get more information from. They can share the Fire Festival details. Okay, next thing they need to know now is they need to find out about the ritual and what the ritual entails. So again, what am I ideas, approaches for this is that whenever I think in general, I would say this Fire Festival one is pretty easy to get the clues for. So I'm not gonna impose very heavy checks for this. Is if they talk to the right people, they're just gonna get it, right? But for deeper stuff, one of my approaches, you don't give it away for free. There's something that they might have to do, or something that might have that something has to happen before you get that clue. For example, details of the ritual, right? The monks at the temple can reveal the secret of the ritual if they feel that the PCs are worthy, and then they can fight one of the warrior monks. And this is where I tie in a bit to the setting itself also. This warrior monk was once a warlord, and once he lost everything, he turned to religion. And yeah, and he now resides in the temple. And if the PCs manage to beat him, there is something as well. They get a piece of this information. One of the things I'm going to like drop in here as well is that this particular warlord was known for slaying a sea giant some time back. So now he's a little bit of an old grizzled warrior already, but in the past he was like a young upshot. And this is a little bit of a tidbit to the worthy sacrifice I mentioned later on. One of the items that you can offer to the players can offer to the sea god is this warlord sword, because it slayed a sea giant. The sea god would want it as like a reparation, basically. Yeah, and the sea god is furious, angry, but he is just. He's a measure for measure kind of guy, and he will give and take as necessary. He's not a completely evil force. The next thing is, there are some archers who are practicing by the sea to do the lighting festival later on, but obviously they won't be able to do it because everybody will be locked at home by about 6 because the tide is so high, except the PCs who are, and they should be doing these kind of things. Yeah. So in this setting, in this particular part, if the PCs can beat one of the archers in the archery competition thing, they get the clue. If they visit the organizer in the town square, the person who's arranging the whole festival, they might get some clues also. But he's a little bit frustrated and occupied the moment. Obviously, you would be on the day of a festival. So if you try to help out a little bit and his trust, maybe he will relent. Okay, the jewel itself, how do they find out about the jewel? Obviously, when the adventure starts, they will already have the first clue that, hey, somebody is missing from this picture, right? There's only one body, but there are two people registered to this residence. Where's the next one hiding? And if they ask around town, something like that, they might find out that, hey, this farmer is hiding in an inn and he hasn't stepped out of his room in days, for example. That's an interesting lead for them to follow up. The other one is, as they're walking around town, they could encounter this mass of people outside the trader's door, the trader that bought the jewel. He's been cooped up at home, hasn't left since also. He's so mesmerized by the thing, it's like a Gollum and the One Ring kind of thing. The locals are obviously getting angry because they can't get stock from the guy before the festival, and people are pissed. That's something also. And of course, if you want to know anything about diamonds and jewels and stuff like that, the local pickpocket gang would know where to fence these kind of things, so who would want to buy these kind of things. And the gang's still kids, so if you help them win some carnival prizes, like from the kabuki, not the kabuki, the matsuri, you may convince them to share more. So I wanted to have this part in because it's a festival, right? So I want my players to be involved in the festival in some way. So this is like a cool way to integrate that into the adventure and clue gathering. And it's a little bit more lighthearted as well, so the whole adventure doesn't feel so dread all the time. Okay, so how do they know about the sacrifice of the dragon god? One of the things that you need to tell the players also is the character of the dragon god. That he's vengeful and angry, but he's just. And to allude a little bit to the katana as a viable item, the village was once destroyed by a tsunami as payment for slaying the Umibozu, which is the sea giant. And the other one I wanted to put in was those who voluntarily become the Funa Yurei again. The Funa Yurei is the zombie pirate guys. If they voluntarily become that as to become like a agent of justice for the sea god. They are imbued with honor and they are stronger than the rest. These three things directly relate to the sacrifices that you can give. So number one, the players can bring the oyster farmer who stole the jewel to the shrine as pay recompense, basically. Next is Akashi sword. So the warlord in the temple, his sword would make an offering as well. And if they don't do either of these, or they put in some item that you as a GM feel is not good enough, the sea god will come and say, "Hey, this sacrifice is shit, but you look strong. If you pledge yourself to me, I will call off the attack, and I will gain a strong warrior in you." So something like this, I think it would be pretty cool. Okay, so we talked about all these things already, but also this place is supposed to be crawling with monsters. There needs to be some kind of looming threat that the PCs can feel, apart from just the rising water level. And this is where the random encounters come in. I'll roll dice when they go from location to location, and on a 5 or 6, there is an attack. And I actually incorporated some clues into the attacks as well. For example, the first one, a group of children are running away from Nayure, and if they rescue the kids, they're quite grateful, and they are willing to answer any questions that they may know. The legends they have heard locally, blah blah blah. They can fill in the gaps. The second one is they're ransacking a home. The owner, if they don't know about the jewel yet, they can get it from here. The owner's inside, and if you rescue the owner, he tells you that, hey, they were calling out and looking for something called the Aptite Stone. And of course, the last one, I put it there so that I can direct the PCs to a very important location, the temple, which has quite a lot of clues, and probably the place that would most willingly help them. I added in there as well. And then the last one is so they can encounter the Honorable Funa Yure, and he can share his experience if you best him, and he's, oh no, I wasn't like slain by the sea. I offered myself as a sacrifice so that my comrades can escape certain death. And hopefully this kind of gets the players thinking about this and be like, okay, that might be a viable option for me. Then I have some details. Lastly, also what exactly needs to be done during the ritual. First of all, it must be night, so the village is basically flooded at this point. People are evacuating, blah blah blah. The offering must take place at the shrine. The offering must be placed at the shrine, the Torii Gate area. 3 torches must be lit by the fire arrows, and a PC has to roll the boat past the Torii Gate and call the sea god, somebody worthy. So if your PC has been killing stuff wantonly, has been a murder hobo, blah blah blah, stealing shit, the sea god's not gonna be happy to see that person. If that happens, it's the end of the adventure and it's a one shot. The sea god's gonna swallow you whole. And of course, while they are trying to complete this ritual, the undead are attacking them. And yeah, and basically that's the adventure. Yeah, that's generally my approach to coming up with this. I hope you guys found it useful. I honestly I did this video impromptu. I didn't really plan, okay, I'm going to cover X X X X X. Just like a short video. I don't know if it's short. I don't know how long I've been recording for, but just want to do like a video to share with everyone how to write these adventures, and hopefully it inspires you to go out there and create something as well. Hi again. I'm gonna conduct a bit of a post-mortem now. I ran this adventure probably 2 days ago, and I just wanted to go through some of the gaps that might have been there as well when I designed this adventure and when the players were running it. Obviously, as a GM, you're gonna run into a lot of situations where you plan the thing and then your players don't engage with whatever you're planning, or they just do something really wild and different that you probably didn't foresee. And how do you deal with that as a GM on the ground? Because they're already here playing the game, right? You can't just say, hey, can you guys do this instead? Sometimes you can if they go wildly off track, but there are certain ways as a GM where you can, even though you haven't planned for it and they're going in a very different direction from what you intended and they're missing out some perhaps key clues, the way you structure the adventure you can find ways to easily put those clues in back again. What do I mean by this? I think if we take a look at the adventure itself. Over here, when I designed this adventure, a lot of it hinged on the fact that the players were actually curious and wanted to know more about the fire festival. And one of the most important parts they had to go to was the temple. One of the most important locations they had to go to was the temple to get those juicy details. I What happened was the players at the end of the day they went to the temple was one of the last locations they visited. So there were a few times where I tried to direct them towards the temple. When I rolled on the random encounters, I used one of those encounters to be like, hey, all these zombies are making a beeline towards the temple, but they were like, okay, then we won't go there. Go the complete opposite direction, which I guess also made sense. We let them do that. In between, I tried to drop a few little tidbits about the fire festival and what it all means and etc. So at the end of the day, they were able to connect the dots, and that's what I mean by when you have, like, for example, how the fire festival works, right? You can hear the information like, okay, this is one statement, there is one true fact about the fire festival, that's another one, that's another one, and you don't have to learn all of these things from the same source. So essentially, it's three pieces of clues of the same element, but even if you have one or two pieces, it's easy, or it's, let's say, viable to link these things together, even if you don't know that piece of information. For example, if I tell you that, hey, you found a sandwich at the crime scene and it was only vegetables. Maybe, yeah, it's easy. It could be an easy conclusion to say that, hey, maybe the perpetrator or whoever left this sandwich here is vegetarian. So yeah, it's those things, and then maybe later on they hit to the maybe a lead they follow up is I go to the supermarket and I talk to the cashier and ask, hey, who are your most common vegetarian customers, for example, and then they have a list and all that, and they're like, oh, I recognize this NPC from talking to him before, and he was really sus. That's how you link these two things together without directly telling them that, hey, from the sandwich that you found on the ground, you can tell that it's eaten by a vegetarian, and his name is blah 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 because you recognize the teeth patterns or whatever, right? You split this information up so people can make reasonable conclusions, even if they don't have like all the pieces of the puzzle. They can speculate and things like, for example, when my players actually went on this adventure, they kind of one of the clues I decided to impromptu drop uh, into the game for them was a talisman that was covered in barnacles and stuff like that. Because instead of heading directly towards the constable, the police constable or the mayor, they went directly to the oyster farmer's old place of residence, which honestly I didn't prepare for. But based on the character's behavior, the NPC's behavior, probably would have evacuated the place and left it alone and moved everything to the new house. Maybe they did it quite haphazardly because they were so excited for their new place, so they could have left a couple of clues there. Also, the sea zombie guys will probably have visited that place. So one of the clues I left for them was like, okay, it's like a talisman that's covered in barnacles. One of the characters was an artisan, so I was able to tie in that character's background also and say, hey, you're an artisan, so you know all about art styles and design, etc., etc. This particular talisman doesn't look like it's from this era. It looks like maybe hundreds of years ago, I don't know, some other dynasty, right? And the inscriptions on this particular, a well-wishing before somebody goes to war. So extend their minds thinking like, oh, maybe suddenly the murder doesn't like whatever happened in the house. It doesn't feel like just a murder anymore. It's, oh, they were looking for something here. Perhaps there's a tie to a spooky element because previously when you first investigate the house, it doesn't necessarily scream supernatural. But once you find the talismans, and suddenly your mind is like thinking about these things. So at least that was like the feedback that I got from the players. So I like that. And this is an example of you as a GM, the material, the NPCs, and the motivations of everybody in the setting. So you can spontaneously and easily add in these kind of things as and when, and it makes sense, right? And it points people to the right direction. Yeah. Then after that they went to investigate something else, and on the way they met the zombies who were worshipping the sea god at the shrine. And that was when they had a little bit of interaction. They stole some pearls from the oyster farmer's house and they offered them to the sea zombies. And the sea zombies took it, but they said, "Hey, these are tribute. This would be excellent tribute to the sea god." So you know that the sea god accepts like sacrifices, like tributes and things like that, and they know that these NPCs are working for the sea god, and it links from there and everything like that. Yeah, again, these are not things that I planned for. Essentially, I planned for them to confront these guys meditating at the shrine, and they fight them or something like that. But they chose a different path, which was fine as well. At the end of the day, I think the players didn't actually find out too much about the Fire Festival, actually. Everything was inferred on the spot itself. They learned a little bit about the legend from the monks when they finally went to the temple, but they never really learned about the significance of the torches or the little boat until I pointed it out to them through an investigation role. Yeah. But afterwards, there was a little bit of trial and error. They were like, "Oh, I'm assuming past the we're sailing past the Torii Gate, but nothing's happening. What are we supposed to do? We're supposed to light." And then they connected. Oh, I think we need to light the torches in like certain order, blah blah blah. And then like they fired the arrows and everything like that. Okay, the other thing that happened was when they actually summoned the sea god, they brought the wrong sacrifice. They brought the head of the guy that was already killed, the farmer that was already killed when they first started the adventure. The sea god demanded that, "Hey, this is not a full sacrifice. I need the other person. What are you doing?" And one of the characters was quite smart. She was like, "Okay, how about you give us more time and we'll come back with the other guy." And of course, the sea god. It's reasonable for the sea god to consider this. He is a just character. So the sea god said, "Yo, sure, you have till the moon reaches its apex, essentially midnight, whatever it is." And they had a couple of hours to find this thing, but to instill a greater sense of danger, I made the sea god create a pact essentially with the character who was standing on the podium. If you don't do this by midnight, I will turn you into a zombie and you will be compelled to join my kingdom. And there was like some kind of magical ritual that he did to put that curse on her, which was great because they were all like struggling and trying to find the last person really desperately. They actually went back to the temple to get possessed by. I think it was maybe quite smart of them to do. So they went to the temple to ask the abbot for help. "Hey, can you talk to the spirit of this guy who was murdered so that we can learn more about where his partner actually is?" And they managed to do that, and they delivered the final sacrifice, etc. Eventually, because they didn't go down the route of learning more about the festival, the adventure actually ended slightly earlier than I anticipated. But essentially, it was still a very tense kind of. I felt like it was quite tense towards the end because all these things were coming to a head, and they've taken quite a lot of damage by then already, just by extraneous circumstances. There are a lot of times where they got a 9 to pass. Because to pass in this game, you need to get to roll 10 and up. And there were a lot of 9s or 8s and stuff like that. So what I did for them was, okay, I'll give you the clue if you roll high enough, but you take damage equal to the difference between that. So if you roll 9, you take 1 damage. Somehow, somewhere, during an investigation, I don't know, you trip and fall, or you accidentally stab yourself, something falls in your head, blah blah blah. List goes on, right? But the point is, there is a consequence to that failure, and it doesn't stop you dead in your tracks when you're investigating something. I think that's quite important for investigation adventures sometimes. But yeah. But overall, I think what I probably maybe should do in the future is to, I don't know, honestly I don't know if I would have done anything differently. Maybe I would have made the whole fire festival thing, the story behind the fire festival, a bit more of a highlight, bring it to more prominence towards the players. Because when they started the adventure, their mindset was very like, I want to solve this murder, not learn more about the festival. I don't know, maybe I could have left like a clue at the initial crime scene that, hey, something that doesn't literally say, hey, this incident is directly tied to the story of the festival, but a little bit of illusion to that, right? So it points the players in that direction rather than they're focused on something else that actually, in the grand scheme of things, might not be as important. So, yeah. So anyway, that's like my post-mortem and a little bit about how I dealt with some unseen circumstances. And perhaps that has helped you also. I think the most important thing for GMs to do when designing your adventures is to just know the NPCs, know their motives, know the setting enough so that when it's necessary to impromptu add clues to point players in the right direction, it can be done in a very organic way. And yeah, that's it for me. Yeah, I guess one of the things I actually learned this in culinary school when I was back in culinary school. One of my instructors, my head chefs, told me a great chef isn't somebody who can cook well. It is somebody who can cook well, yes, but more importantly, it's somebody who is able to fix mistakes and recover from mistakes and unseen circumstances during service, because they're going to happen. No matter how well you prepare for it, it's going to happen. But the mark of a true chef is somebody who has the skills to easily recover from that and keep the ball rolling. So yeah, that's something I guess I brought into my GM practice as well. So yeah, I hope that has helped you, and please subscribe, whatever it is. And if you enjoy more of this content, yeah, tune in more. All right, see you. Bye bye.